Aloha and welcome to Author Talk. I'm Lori, coming to you from the beautiful big island of Hawaii. And I'm so excited about my guest today, Lisa Jo Symonds. I've been looking forward to this for a while now. Her book is The Hands That Held Me. I have it on my Kindle, but if you have a book, this is the cover of her book. So, welcome, Lisa. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Yes, so let's just start a little bit about your background, and it's a little bit hard to fathom some of the things that you went through. So tell us. I know you kind of grew up on a farm in New York, upstate New York, I think.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
We're actually right next to Lake George, little tiny town. Everybody knows everybody.
Okay, so you can't sneeze without everybody knowing what's going on.
Exactly. True
I've never
story.
I've never lived in a small town like that, so I can't imagine. So you have five siblings. You're out on a farm, and I mean your family's dysfunctional, but it was your father, I believe, that was kind of the main abuser in the family.
To start with, yes.
Okay. So it kind of started with your father and moved on out to just others. It seemed like that was just the environment that you
Yeah, I was
lived
just going to
in.
say, I believe everybody is a product of their environment, especially in my family. So everybody took on a role.
Yes, yes. So, and you were one of five, but were you the youngest?
I was.
Okay,
Yep.
so you're the youngest of five as well. So you've got older siblings, and so um, in your home, with I'll just kind of start with your father to begin with the abuse of your father towards your mother and other siblings, and he was a large man, right? So kind of physically intimidating,
Very, yes.
and
Exactly.
you would see this the abuse going on, but at a really young age I felt like you had already learned how to protect yourself by kind of going off alone. So what were some of the things that you did, like really as a little girl, to kind of remove yourself?
I did just that. I removed myself. I spent a lot of time outside, um, in the woods. I built my own forts. They were my houses. Um, I went in my room a lot, and I had a perfectly clean room. I think that was partly because I couldn't control my environment, so my room I could control, so it
Okay.
was perfect. That and clutter is like chaos to me, and
Yes.
we had enough of that in the house. But yeah, I just spent most of my time alone. My father was gone a lot, or he would be drinking,
Mm-hmm.
passed out when it wasn't chaos, and my mom slept a lot. She had gotten addicted to Valium,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm pretty sure she just did that to tolerate life. But
Sure, sure.
and my sisters and brothers were quite a bit older than me, so I mean, I was pretty alone.
Yes, and so you, with kind of your parents not uh, taking care of you, essentially, it sounded like nobody was watching you. So you grew up with no structure, um,
Exactly.
and you had written in your book that there was alcohol got put in your baby bottle,
Yeah.
that kind of thing, and that drugs were just that was just the part of the way your family lived.
I didn't know it wasn't normal.
that's
So,
that's just how ingrained
exactly.
it was in the daily
Right.
lifestyle. Yes, which blows my mind. And so this was all normal to you. You didn't know any different. So early on, you found to protect yourself. You were alone. You did good in school. But then as you got a little older, um, your own kind of dysfunction started taking over the negative mindsets that would of course, come from, that kind of upbringing. And so you started kind of making some of your own decisions that weren't great. Um, yeah.
I guess that was if you can't beat them, join them kind of thing. Probably also meant to tolerate, like my mom was doing with the Valium. But yeah, as a kid, I took on, like I was saying, as children of alcoholics, I've learned that we all take on a role, and my role was the perfect one, the good one, the straight A student, kept everything clean, was quiet, respectful, very good kid. And I guess, you can only be hurt or see so much before you start to harden a little bit. Um, and then there's some rebellion. I guess most of my rebellion started when my mother said they were divorcing. Looking back, I probably should have appreciated that. But to me, it was just another thing shaking up my world.
Yes.
So
Yeah. And so kind of during that time before your parents divorced, there was also sexual abuse in the home with other family members and kind of the wider family. But you had a mechanism, which probably most people do, but I loved the way that you wrote about it, that your mind would go to, and you have, willow tree, warm breeze, and so you kind of disassociated from your life, like in those moments. So how did that work? Like, how did that happen?
I really don't even have an answer for that because it was just automatic. I think especially when you're young, when you're experiencing something that you absolutely cannot understand or tolerate, you literally check out completely, separate from your body. Like, so far separated that a lot of it I did not even remember until many, many years later. Something else triggered all those memories. But yeah, I think that God's just always been there holding on to me. And whenever I couldn't tolerate, he brought me to that beautiful place and put all these words to worship songs in my mind. Like in my family, of course, I had never been to church. I had never heard about God. It's just something that wasn't in my home. But I knew every word to every worship song from like 4 years old on. And to this day, it's still my gift. When a new song comes out, I hear it, I know it. It's just my husband, every time, he's still amazed. We'll be driving down the road and I'll just be every word, and he's just shocked. I guess he said I should go on what's the name of that show where you name the tune in one
yes.
word.
Yeah.
I would be good at that.
Yes. And so your mind, or as you kind of say, God took you to this a beautiful place while these horrific things were going on, and that was kind of where you got the title for your book, right?
The Hands That Held Me.
Yes. So later on, you were able to look back at all of these different kind of experiences or times and see that that God was with you and protecting you as best. Yeah. That's amazing. That's so amazing to me. And the fact that you know the words to a song at such a young age without even hearing the song, it's a miracle. You're a miracle. You are definitely a miracle. And so there comes a time, I don't know if this was around the divorce or maybe this was the final straw with your parents, but your father had put a gun to your mom's face. And so there's a lot of drama going on.
Actually, yeah. He had her sitting in a chair in the living room. He had come home from wherever, definitely very intoxicated. And he sat her in the chair in the living room and lined us up on the couch. And he was just going from one of us to another saying, this one's not my kid. That one's not my kid. You're not my kid. This one's your father. That one's your father. So, I mean, there's the man I love, my father, telling me I'm not his. And actually, he was pointing the gun at us.
Okay.
Yeah. And my mom was like whispering or mouthing the words for me to go hide the bullets. But like, I didn't even know where the bullets were. I didn't know what bullets were. So I was like, just stuck there. There's nothing I could do. So.
Yes. Gosh, that must have been terrifying. So what you wrote with that scene was Stockholm Syndrome was born that day, and we'll come back to Stockholm Syndrome. But you later on in your research and healing process, you realized it was that moment when you were a little girl when it was really born.
There were several moments, but that was probably the first. Yeah.
Okay, so we will definitely talk a lot about that. I think your parents are divorced now, and at the age of 12, you move in with the sister you call the second sister. She was a little bit older, and so how was that? At 12 years old, again, the no structure kind of being the no parental guidance. They just let their little girl kind of live wherever she wants, kind of thing.
Well, by then I had spent many nights at my sister's house overnight while she went out and I watched her kids. And I mean, that started young. Like, I can't even remember now. I think I put it in the book. Thinking back, 7, 8, 9 years old, I was up watching her kids all night long and cleaning her house and cooking for her kids and helping them with their homework. So by 12, it was second nature.
Okay.
So, and I think my mom was just glad that I was out of the house. So in case something did happen with my father, that less exposure, but by then, less is more.
So your mother actually thought it was good and possibly better for you to be out of your house and in with your sister.
Right.
It didn't really turn out that way. I felt like things got really dark once you kind of moved in permanently with her, and because there was a lot of drugs still in that home, and she had her lifestyle and all of that, and introduced you, I kind of feel like, into that. So just tell us a little bit about what went on while living with your sister.
Well, she had a lot of people around, mostly men. They loved her. She was fun. And that was all hours of the day and night. Whenever she wasn't working, there was always a party. And like, at the time, I guess I looked at it like a good thing that, because she wanted me around. Sad, but being wanted anywhere was a good thing at that time. And I mean, when I was a little younger, during the parties, everybody would just kind of ignore me, and I would be lingering around the outside edges and, just sipping here and sipping there and grabbing this and that and whatever I had to do. But as I got a little older and started to mature, then the interest was switching from my sister to me. Yeah. Unfortunately, you can't unhear things. And one thing that I'll never forget was someone telling my sister how much I was worth. That stuck with me.
You mean in terms of like a price?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Putting a dollar value on me, and then knowing and hearing them say, because I was younger and I hadn't had kids, and I was thinner and firmer or whatever, and my hair was longer, had dark skin. So I was placing subconsciously value on all of those things, and all of my worth in myself was based on my looks. So when I got pregnant and gained weight, of course, my self-esteem hits the floor because then my value goes down.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in the aging thing, if I cut my hair and didn't like it, like I've been hard on myself my whole life. It actually created like a body dysmorphic
Mm-hmm.
disorder, and
Mm-hmm.
that's been hard to live with.
Yes, and so that was kind of where you began to be trafficked.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, and had to go through all that, and but there were hands that were holding you um, through that as well. Yeah, and so you have there's so many. I could talk with you for a long time about your book, but because there's so many stories that you've just survived, really. One that struck me was you lived in New York, and your mom, I think, had moved to Florida at this time, and you literally walked from New York to Florida. That blew my mind. Um, but what I felt like I was seeing was a brave girl. But can you explain what was your thinking?
Um, I still have that thinking. It's terrible. Um, it's the fight or flight thing. My fight or flight system was turned on so often and
Mm-hmm.
for so long as a child that I kind of got stuck in that mode.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, like, even times when I've needed rehab, I would try repeatedly to do rehab. And within a day or two, I had to run away because um, I get that trapped feeling. I can't be trapped, I can't be held down. Um, so anytime I begin to feel trapped, I've always run, no matter what I have to do. So I actually hitchhiked to Florida. That's another whole story.
But
Scared my mom to
you were
death for
like
me.
14 or 15 years old though, right? Very,
Yeah.
very young. And but by this time a drug addict as well. You were addicted as well, legitimately, on
Yeah,
your
to
own.
many things. And I
Yeah.
mean, I was used to, like you said, no rules and nobody supervising and doing whatever, whenever I
Mm-hmm.
wanted. So, getting first things first, when I first got placed into foster care, I was placed into a very strict religious home
Mm-hmm.
where you're not even allowed to listen to music. I couldn't talk to my boyfriend. And I mean, prior to that, we were living together. So that
Mm-hmm.
was difficult. So really the trapped feeling set in. Well, I actually left there for a different reason, but eventually I ended up, because I kept running, I ended up in a detention home that was way north near the border of like Canada. And yeah, trapped feeling. I took off and ran from there. That's the time we were talking about. And the first night was awful because there was no houses anywhere and no lights, and it was very dark, and I'm alone going down the road. Um, and then a pack of wolves. I could hear them getting louder and louder, and um, I ended up breaking into a camp that I finally stumbled on and hiding in there until morning. And I felt terrible about that, so I left them a note. But I mean, I survived,
Yes.
and then I got back on the road and did my thing.
Yes. So it's amazing. I mean, you were brave. You were reckless,
Fearless.
fearless. All of those.
I
So
still am fearless.
yes,
I
yes.
fear nothing.
Well,
It's
that
part of
can
the
be kind of
problem.
good. Yeah. Um, and so let's fast forward because I know that you did get married and have children. You were married for a long time, and then that dissolved. Ended in divorce, and you had stayed clean and sober for many years while raising your kids, your
Right.
children. But then there's a
Yes.
divorce, and we go out, and it's the kind of so you were out celebrating, or you just went back out. Your friends invited you out to a bar to have a drink, um, and so what happened from there?
Yeah. Well, I wasn't able to write about it in my book for legal reasons, but a lot happened in that 30-year marriage. Um, Yeah, we'll leave that at that. So when I
Yeah.
left, um, I moved like an hour away so I could spread my wings a little bit and try to refine myself. And unfortunately, I spent the first 30 days or so just crying and crying and crying. And then my daughter-in-law at the time said, enough tears, let's go out and do something. So yeah, she took me out to Saratoga. And yeah, it started with a couple of drinks. The first time or two was okay. That quickly progressed. Other things came up that triggered old memories.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I started reaching into the harder stuff. Nothing was numbing it anymore. So you go deeper and deeper.
Yeah, and met a man who you'd feel madly in love with. This was because your marriage for 30 years was actually loveless. You didn't love the person,
Okay.
but so now you've met somebody and have fallen madly in love, and this is a new feeling. This is a new emotion, and so you have to be with him. And I want to talk about this a little more in depth because this is where the Stockholm Syndrome kind of really kicked in, and I really want you to talk about that and the signs of it and what to look out for and all of that. So you meet a man, it's not great, but you can't leave.
Yeah. Um, Definitely new emotions for me. Um, and I mean, I'm smart. Part of me knew, a lot of me knew that it wasn't good for me, but it was something that I had been missing for so long that you're right. Like I was stuck and I really can't explain that until I explain everything else, I guess. Um, that went bad quick. I found out he was a severe alcoholic and he had lived through a lot of stuff with his parents as well. And unfortunately, product of the environment, he learned to be an abuser. And I learned in my childhood to be abused. So together, we were very toxic, but fit
Mm-hmm.
together like two pieces of a puzzle perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
That escalated quickly. Uh, he would drink just like my father. He would drink so many drinks and be fun and stuff. And then all of a sudden it was like a trigger. And then all this, just like my father, he would come out with things that weren't even true. Like, I don't know what made him think it up, but um, he would convince himself that while we were sitting there, that I had left with three other guys and then come back. And I never left at all, still sitting there in my pajamas. So he was really jealous, really, really jealous. It was hard to go to work. He would show up in the parking lot and call and text me a lot. And, I did start losing jobs over that. I did separate a few times and tried to because my family was having a fit, my kids. Um, but like when I would go to work or go to sleep, he would break in and I would wake up to him standing over me, just staring at
Mm.
me. Um, so he had been arrested a few times for this stuff, but for whatever reason, the judge would just let him go, let him go, let him go. And every time he got let go, he was madder. And
Mm.
I was the target of that. So at one point, he had come to the house and was pounding on the door saying, let me in. And I went to open the door and I thought I saw him swinging at me, like trying to punch me. So I slammed the door really quickly and I heard something hit the floor, but I was able to shut the door and then lock it quickly. And then he said, open the door, let me in. And I said, you just tried to punch me. He said, no, I didn't. I tried to stab you in the neck.
Oh.
So I remembered that sound of something hit the floor and I looked down and just inside my doorway was the knife.
Oh.
So
Gosh.
he had come pretty close. Um, I knew that I had to leave,
No, why did you
but when it
stay?
was good, it was so good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
unfortunately, after 30 years of numb, I felt at that time that the good outweighed the bad, even though I know it didn't. It's hard to explain, but you'll understand when we get into the Stockholm thing a little more, I guess.
Yeah, so because you had read that this man was the exact replica of my father, and you were listening to music one night, and it kind of that's when it really hit you. But the Stockholm Syndrome, I did. Let me get to it real quick here. I wanted to read just a little bit from page 50 if I can find it quickly here. Um, because I know you've done extensive research on this, and this is the part. Okay, yeah. Stockholm Syndrome involves developing a strong bond and feelings, including sympathy, support, love, and protectiveness for their tormentor, and may even manifest in negative feelings for anyone, the police, counselors, friends, or family members, trying to separate the person from their tormentor. And that's what your father was doing with the gun that day. But you wanted to still protect him. He was your father. You loved him. This phenomenon is seen in hostages, kidnapping victims, or even victims of extreme domestic violence and abusive relationships, as is my case. So talk a little bit more about I don't know if medical isn't the right term, but I know you've done so much research. Your research is extensive on this that I almost want you to kind of teach us a little bit about Stockholm Syndrome.
Well, I can go from what you just read and give examples that explains it perfectly. So as a child, when my father's abusing, usually with my father, I didn't get the brunt of it. I just saw a lot of it. Of course, the gun thing, but I saw a lot. He would brutalize and hurt people and not stop until I was pretty sure they were dead. And honestly, there's a few that I don't know if they lived or died because we drove away and left them in a heap, a bloody heap, motionless on the ground. But for instance, he really did a lot to my brother. And it was brutal. So I remember screaming a lot in my mind, needing it to stop. But then the cops would come. They'd show up, several of them with their guns drawn, and just literally charge our house and go right by me to go in to find my father. And I didn't want them to take him, even though I needed him to go and I needed it to stop. I was terrified of what they were going to do to him. So, yeah, I grew up learning that love is abusive, and without abuse or jealousy, then in my mind, that wasn't love at all. So the times that I maybe was in a relationship that was fairly normal, in my head, I would create trouble because I didn't think they really loved me. So then fast forward to the abusive relationship we were just talking about. There was a time when, again, he was accusing me of something, and he was just screaming in my face, and he had just grabbed my hair and yanked my head back and was so up close to my face and screaming so that the spit was even hitting my face. And I mean, I've always been a fighter, and up until him, I didn't have any reason to not be a fighter, and I didn't even realize I had a Stockholm thing at that point. But I was gonna fight. My mind said, why are you taking this? Fight back. I mean, I'm strong and I am all that. I was. But as soon as I opened my eyes and looked into his eyes, I was like that little girl, instantly all over again, staring down the barrel of a shotgun at someone who loved me and could take my life in the same moment.
Oh.
And that's when Stockholm, that had been dormant for years, blew up and came to life. And After that, no one could get me away from him. Same thing, the cops would come to arrest him and I would defend. I even had at one point, they were finally going to do something. I had at one point gone to see the DA and begged him and said, "Oh, it's not like that. None of these things are really happening. And it's just the nosy neighbors." And knowing that I would get more of the same. Um, I call them doggy treats. When you love somebody that much, especially as a child, well, then again, as an adult, but when you love somebody and you have those good times with them when they pay attention to you or they sing with you and they show you love, and then the very next minute, they're showing you the worst brutality, your mind is scrambling. And all you know in that moment is you would do anything to get them to be good to you again and to show you that love again. So those are doggy treats. So then you get trained. This is where the Stockholm cycle happens. You tell yourself, if I just be good, he'll love me. He'll be good to me. He won't be mean to me. If I just be better, well, there's got to be ways I can be better. Something's wrong with me. I must have done something wrong. So I'm going to be better because I need them doggy treats. Unfortunately, the doggy treats, especially with narcissists, get farther and fewer in between, and they get a lot more expensive to get them. But by then you're trained, you're in that cycle.
Yes, well, that's such a great way to put it. That they're farther, they get farther apart. They're more expensive,
Yeah.
Emotionally, physically, spiritually, all of that. So through your life, once you got a little older and you went to church, you kind of gone through church, in and out of church for a while, and of course God, the hands that held you. But I think at some point, you did get spirituality, that kind of stuck with you, even though you were in and out of church. So, kind of, what role has that played, like in your healing process, in your life?
There wouldn't be a healing process without it. It's something that's been with me, like I said, even before I understood who and what it was. Um, I had been years singing songs to the clouds, singing all these worship songs, before a neighbor finally said one day, "You want to go to church with us?" And they had this big yellow bus, and she said we get ice cream after. So I'm like, yeah, I'm in. So I went to church and they started singing songs, and I'm just singing them. And my friend's mom said, "Are you sure you've never been to church? How do you know these songs?" And I said, "I don't know. I just know them."
Yeah.
And then, like, I'd see the stuff hanging on the wall and I'd say, "That's my friend. That's my friend." But I'd never had a name before for my friend. And pictures of Jesus on the wall and stuff, or on the covers of the books. And I just knew that was my friend. So, and the whole time as a child, I would try to be calming things down in my house and saying, "But God loves you," and, things like that. Um, of course, no one listened, but I still tried it. And then I guess by the time I moved in with my sister at 12 or so, and things started really getting dark, I didn't feel him anymore. I actually forgot about him. Or, um, or I blocked that out so that I could do all of the things that I was doing wrong without the guilt. Because I always had a strong sense of the guilt, if I did anything wrong. I'm good at self-punishment. It comes with a big conscience. I think, again, it's because God's there. But when things got dark, it wasn't actually him that disappeared on me. It was me that put that wall up. He's been there all along. And as soon as things got really bad again, which did this, in the book, I would have nowhere else to turn at some point, homeless or whatever, freezing, starving, pregnant, whatever. And if you're crying in the dark, well, we'll give you this example. Pregnant, like maybe 8 months pregnant, 15 years old, homeless. I was cold, and I had, like you said, hitchhiked to Florida. But at that point, things had gone sour in my mom's home with her husband. And so I went out and just basically stayed in the park where everybody lived like I was used to living, all the partying and stuff. But I was tired, so I fell asleep on a bench. And I woke up to someone like trying to mess with my body, my clothes, trying to take my shoes. So I actually, the only choice I had, I went into an outhouse and shut the door and locked it and just, mm, sorry,
That's okay.
shrunk down and sat there and cried. And I was worried that my baby was cold. I mean, I didn't know any better. I was 15, so I didn't realize my body heat was enough. But I was worried that he was cold and hungry because I was. Times like that, when you're alone in the dark, I would turn again and God would just be there every time. The song would just pop in my head and I would just start singing. And then before you know it, I'm what they call praising in the storm. When things are really bad, I'm worshiping. And once I start singing, it lifts me and takes it all away and makes everything good. So for that reason, I've always been able to, no matter what was going on in my world or in my home, I was always able to show other people joy. And like when I was a nurse, I sang to a lot of my patients, especially if they're dying, I would hold their hand and sing worship songs to them. So it's something I've always been able to give, even though I wasn't always able to receive it myself. Um, it kept me alive literally a few times when I tried not to live anymore. He kept me alive and I didn't understand why. I get it now. He's using my story to help so many people, and my research is going to go a long way. I'm already seeing change, and it's not just mine, it's just this whole group of people in this generation finally that are saying, there's really something to trauma with addiction and trauma with all these health problems and trauma with psychological problems. So that is going to go a long way in changing how treatment is given for mental health and addiction and stuff like that. So God had a reason, I just didn't know it. Um, so yeah, he's just always been there when there's nothing else. So, and if he wasn't there, it was me that shut him out. So it's never him.
Yeah. So, gosh, I love that. I love that you recognize that you look back, you see all the times, you still see the times, that God was there for you. We kind of need to wrap up. So is there one last thing that you would want to say or impart to people about your story?
Actually, yes. And it comes back to the Stockholm thing. I was in counseling. I had started counseling again towards the end of my active using, right before a major overdose and heart attack. But I couldn't stay away, like I said, and even though my family was dumping me and my world was falling apart, I could not stay away from that guy that I was with. And then finally nothing anyone said to me reached me. And then one day something this counselor said to me nailed me. And I use this when I talk to other addicts and other people who can't seem to see past their situation or get past their situation. She said to me, "Do you not feel worthy of a better life?" And of course I said, "No, I don't. Why would I feel worthy?
Yeah.
I mean, look at what I've lived. If my own parents didn't want me, how am I supposed to believe anybody else would, or that I have any value?" So she said, "You remember the little girl that's inside of you, the one I wrote about in my book? She was born like every other baby, just wanting to be loved in security and all the normal things in life, and she deserved that. Um, and if I don't think that I'm worthy of saving, I need to remember that that little girl is still inside of me, and she needs to be saved from all of that, the exposure to everything, because she's worth more, and that her life is in my hands. So I tell that to people now. Maybe you don't think that you're worth surviving an overdose or whatever, but that little kid inside of you still has so much life left to live and so many things they're meant to accomplish and do, and their life is in your hands.
Oh man, that's beautiful, and what a great piece of wisdom. So, Lisa, stick around for a little bit, but everybody, thank you so much for watching. Lisa's story is amazing. It's mind blowing. It's unfathomable. It's very well written. Um, and you will learn a lot. You'll get a lot of hope, inspiration. If you know anybody struggling, it doesn't have to be kind of the horrificness that Lisa went through, but if you know anybody that's suspected of maybe the Stockholm Syndrome or PTSD in any way, get Lisa's book. Do you have a copy of it right there? By chance, I'll hold it.
I do, and I actually
Yeah.
changed the cover.
Oh, okay. Let's see your new cover. Okay. So it's available on Amazon. It is really well worth your time. So aloha, and we will see you next time.